Hello and welcome to another progress update of the Ruins game. Yeah, I've been working pretty hard on this level generator, and in fact, if I zoom in, for those of you who are on on mobile devices that can't see so well, I've got these little yellow squares, and those represent torches that would appear on the walls. You'll see that they're pretty evenly spaced, but still random. And you'll also see these red squares. These are the stairs up and stairs down that will allow the player to go between levels of the dungeon. So we'll return back to normal zoom. And I've also gotten a lot more fine control going on with what I can do with my maps. And again, I'll zoom in for people who are on mobile, right? So I can change the Hall turn chance, Hall turn desaturation, Hall reproduce chance, and I'll show you what all these things do, or at least some of them. And it's pretty cool. I think this is really good granular control that I can have over the maps that would be great for when the game is running. The reason that I would need so much control over this is, say, for example, I have a map that's in a very swampy area in the game, and this is still a roguelike, but there are different areas that the player can travel to and then go into dungeons there. And these are fairly shallow dungeons, but there's plenty of them in different biomes, and so that kind of helps break everything up so it doesn't get monotonous. But yeah, let's say that we want to go into some sort of marshy area. Well, what I can do is, instead of having rooms, I can do caves. And we'll reduce the number of caves to maybe 4%. Sounds good? We'll go with 4%. And room, or the cave produce desaturation, we'll bring that all the way up to 15. And if I hit restart, then we'll start producing caves instead of rooms to give this kind of swampy feel a little bit. Of course, later on I can put in controls to add water and sludgy ground, etc. I don't like the way that this map turned out so much, but again, I can play and fiddle around with these controls until I get what I want. And the idea here is that I can mess around with these controls here with this mock-up, and then I can transport all these values as hard-coded values into the game, so that whenever the player goes into, say, the desert, they'll get maps that feel like they belong in the desert while still being random. Now, Fate Ignati, yes, that Fate Ignati, on the last video asked why I'm doing this random generation of the maps instead of using some predefined maps and just using, having them switch every time the player plays. Well, this is a roguelike. The idea is that, yeah, I have a setup so that people can save, the save scumming, but I also want to have another playstyle that's, people are familiar with. So, for example, I want to be able to... I'm playing around with the halls. Let's see what happens now. Yeah, so when the player is playing under, the permadeath rule system, the player will always be encountering the same levels that have been pre-generated, and it gets very boring very fast. Now, this works in an RPG, but a roguelike is not an RPG. An RPG is meant to be played once or twice, and it's there for the story and for the adventure. But once you've had the story and the adventure, there's only so many times that you can go back to play it. Whereas a roguelike is meant to be played over and over and over. So we got to worry about the maps getting boring and stale. Now, this is great for sewer level, I think, though a sewer would probably have some caves. So let's redo this with a few caves. Check that out, see how it goes. Yeah, that looks like a good sewer. Perfect. um, I could, if I really wanted to, let's bring all these up and do that. And now what I'll do is basically create this huge room. Yeah. Awesome. Now, Mr. Fennec on the last video also commented, and he talked about my pathfinding woes. If you recall, I was talking about some pathfinding problems that I was encountering where the pathfinding was just a little bit too slow. And he said, well, what you can do is instead create these sectors, and each sector has its own pathfinding space. And when the pathfinding goes between sectors, instead of pathfinding the squares, you pathfind through the sectors. So I did that. Here are my sectors. This is a terrible map to show it on. Let's go back to rooms and and okay. This will be better at showing sectors. So the idea here is that between sectors there are nodes, and when the player or a monster or anybody else wants to get between, from one end of the map to the other, then it will say, all right, well, I'm in this sector and I want to go to that sector. And these sectors are connected with this node, and then this node, and then this node. And so it just creates this line between these nodes, which are only created in the hallways or in the rooms or wherever there's a floor. That's the only place that the nodes are created, and where the sectors overlap. So if I'm going from this sector all the way up here and going down to the sector all the way at the bottom right, then it'll just create an imaginary line, and it doesn't care where the floors are. Then, as the player gets to that node, it starts to worry about pathfinding inside of that sector, but doesn't worry about all the other sectors. This really increases the speed of the pathfinding and allows these huge labyrinthian maps to work for both the player and the monsters. Anyway, these are the things that I've been working on. We also have a lot more coming on with the story, and are almost, I would say, about halfway done with the story. There's a lot of mythology going on, and I can't give any of it away, and I really want to, so I should probably stop talking. Anyway, until the next time, I'm going to be working a little bit more on the level generation, but I don't think I'm going to show you any of that. I think I'm just going to show you more progress on different things rather than just the level generation and pathfinding. Anyway, until next time, I'm Conan Horrors. Have fun.